Good morning. Welcome to today's class. My name is Jon Witt, and this is a handstand prep class. So you don't need a lot of equipment, but I'm going to be doing some stuff at the wall. If you've never been upside down, I'll give you some tips as far as how to get started with going upside down. I'm not going to do a full handstand today, but I haven't taught a headstand in a long time, and it's a good first step in going upside down. So if you've never done a headstand before, you might, if you do have something of a weight, doesn't have to be a heavy weight, but I have a sandbag. I'm going to put it on my head and show how you can condition your neck and your head in supporting the weight, because if you've never done a headstand before or it's been years and years, or if you're actually a pretty big person, I would prepare the neck for a while, at least a couple weeks, before I would just go up into a headstand. Headstand can be a bit more dangerous than a handstand, but it could be a good position to learn to go up and down and to get you eventually getting up into the handstand, because the handstand's way more difficult in terms of skill. Like, you have to have a really good awareness of spatial, how to line yourself up. So I'll give you tips along the way to help get into all these positions. So I hope these classes have been helping you. I enjoy teaching them. I've shortened the time just so that it's a little bit more specific, and that one, I'm not just throwing people up into headstands or handstands. There's real steps to all of this, so that it's safe, but then eventually effective, and that you can have a free-handed handstand. That's the goal of this class, is to eventually get you into these positions. So if you didn't know, my website's jonwittyoga.com. I also have a YouTube channel, so you can subscribe, like the channel. It helps support my cause. If you'd like to make a donation, it helps me teach others for free. So all my information's on my website. So how we're going to start is in an all four position. So I'm going to come onto my hands and my knees. So with my hands just underneath my shoulders and my knees underneath my hips, I'm just going to be moving the weight around and then adjusting the weight in the hands to prepare the wrist. So for a handstand, a big part is preparing the wrist, the soft tissues. Like if you just went out and ran even a mile or a couple blocks, for some people that's way too much weight and pressure in the joints, and that's why people feel not so good from running. So the same thing with going into your hands. If you've never been on your hands a lot, you'll most likely need some soft tissue work to get the hands to prepare to be having the weight into them as we do in a handstand. So just take the hands and turn them back towards the knees if you could, and then I'm just moving the weight again side to side, which is a lot easier than moving forward and back. Forward is easy, back is more complicated, but this really is your handstand. So it's like, this is kind of the pressure. So if you're like, wow, this really is painful, nothing to worry about, it just means that you probably need more preparatory conditioning for the hands, for the wrist. So go back to turning the hands forward, and if you could, turn the hands to face the knees. And then as you're having your hands like so, just kind of moving the weight around the circumference of the hands. And I'm just, again, kind of seeing how my hands feel before I'm actually going to be on them, right? And then I'm going to turn the hands forward, and then I'm going to prepare the shoulders. So I'm letting the chest drop down, and then I'm pressing through the shoulders. So these are scapular push-ups. So I'm slowly lowering, letting the shoulder blades come in, and then pressing through the hands. And this is really for plank, any kind of arm balance. It's protraction, and then just letting the chest drop down, and then pressing. I've said this before. You can't really hold a handstand. It might be that you're not getting the stability in the shoulders. It's a big part of it. So what we're going to do is lift the knees up off the floor and come up into plank, and I'm gripping the floor, I'm pressing, I'm rounding through my shoulders, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm letting the chest kind of fall down in between the arms, and then I'm going to press. index fingers are pointed forward, but let's say you do have some wrist limitations. Turn the hands out as much as you need to. So I turn my hands out just as an example, and then I'm going to press, and then I'm going to let the chest drop down. And maybe you're already down, right? You can watch and learn from that way. Then I'm going to push, and then one more time I'm going to let the chest drop down. And then I'm pushing really strong through the hands to support my weight. And then I'm going to come back down on the hands. And then when I come back down on the hands and knees, I'm going to do a bit more for the wrist. But this is basically counter. So if you're doing a lot of arm balances before in your hand, you might not have, you need more flexion in the wrist. So I'm having the hands in this tuck position like I'm holding something. And then with my hands like this could be the position, just holding it statically where my arms are straight. But what I'm going to do is, if I can, I'm going to bend my elbows and bring my head in the same alignment as my hands. So I'm coming down, and then I'm pushing up into the top position so that my arms are straight. So when I bend my elbows, I'm getting into a 90-degree angle with my arms, and then I'm coming up. Arms are straight at the top. Slowly coming down, absorbing the weight into the hands to help support the tissues of the wrist. I'm coming up. This can be quite difficult initially, so maybe just holding the top position, slowly lowering down, pressing through the hands. You really want to, again, keep the weight in the hands. If you can, bring more and more of the weight into the hands. Last time, slowly come down, and then bringing yourself back up. And then just have the hands neutral. Tuck the toes, and when you tuck the toes, just sit back towards the feet. And when you're sitting back towards the feet, it could be all your weight. I am going to show you what I'm talking about with the sandbag and stuff like this. So if you're practicing at home, you could try this now. I'm going to interlace my fingers, and I'm going to have my hands behind my head. And this is the classic headstand, right? So let's say my arms were lower than my head. I wouldn't do a classic headstand. I would do a tripod headstand where the hands are at a 90-degree angle. And when we do it at the wall, I'll show you the two differences. But when my hands are here, if my arms are below my head, really the only thing that's supporting me in a headstand is my head. And that's partially why someone could really hurt or injure their neck. So you want to be able to clear your head with your arms. That's one thing. And then you can take the arms down. Now, if you need to change the position of the feet, you can sit back on the feet just in like a basic virasana or, seiza position. So I'm going to bring the sandbag into my head. So this isn't a lot of weight. It's just like 6 pounds. But when I bring it onto my head, I want to be able to support the head. I know this looks goofy, but I'm lifting the weight. I'm never absorbing the weight into my neck. Like I'm pushing the floor away from me. So like I said, if you've never had anything pressing into your head, unless you have a gymnastics background or you've been doing yoga for a while, you're really trying to extend through the skull to support the neck. And this could be just, obviously if you don't have something to put into your head, just bring your hands into your head and press down into the head, but keep lifting the head up into the hands. And then you could relax that. But like I said, you could condition yourself every other day, a couple weeks, something like that, just to get your neck used to that. Because again, once you go all the way up, if you do go up, you want to be prepared for that, right? So come off the feet, and again, when we get to that time when we're at the wall, I'll give you other tips, right? So come back up onto your hands. And when you come back up onto your hands, press through the hands, round through the shoulders, lift up into plank, and pedal the legs out. So as you pedal the legs out, push through the hands, resist the floor. So it's not bad to be passive in your position, but like again, if you're wanting to train your headstand better or your handstand better, you're really going to have to apply more into your hands. So push into the floor,
shoulders are rotated out, right? And then come back into plank. And then when you're back into plank, hollow out the position. Now, if you could, be on the tops of the feet. So once you're on the tops of the feet, it really requires more hand strength. And again, this is just a basic preparatory class to eventually get you into a handstand, as opposed to just kicking up and doing it. Not that I totally disagree with that approach. That could work, right? But you want to know how to create these lines so that eventually when you're upside down, it's not so complicated, and one, it's safe. You don't want to obviously hurt yourself from your practice. So come back onto your hands, and then when you come back onto your hands, push to the hands, resist the floor, and let's, like a 5 count, something like that. We're going to slowly come down to the floor. So I'm pushing. I could use zero strength in this, but I really want to travel through space with tension. I don't want to just come down. So slowly come down. And then when you come down, have your arms just relaxed. And then what you're going to do is tuck through the tailbone. And when you're tucking through the tailbone, you're going to be more like in what you should be like when you're upside down for a headstand or handstand, right? When you're inverting, you're in this tuck position. So when I'm tucked, I'm just keeping my head up so you can hear me, but you could have your head down, but keep your ribs in. So when you get upside down, you don't want the front of your body to be swayed, right? You don't want to be in this arc. So when I'm keeping my ribs in and I'm bringing my tailbone down, there's tension. Now, if you can, bring your feet together, keep your heels together. And that will also help you get into your glutes. And just a couple deep breaths. This is the most basic way of doing it. It's a very good way. And then you could relax. So it's good for your lower back, especially if you have back pain. But I'm going to do another line, and that's just for the arms. So what you can do is have your head down, get your feet together, have your tailbone moving down, and then take the arms up. So as you take the arms up, bring the ribs in. You could open and close the hands. So when you're taking the arms up, try to keep your ribs in. I'm just, again, lifting my head so you can hear me. So have your head down, keep your ribs in, lift through the arms, like lift. And this is the line that you're ultimately creating when you're in handstand. So a couple more breaths. Keep the ribs in, keep the glutes active, keep lifting through the arms, and then bringing the arms down. And then, that's like one round, but you could, when I do these things, I'll do them 5, 10 times, something like that. Quite extensive, because it really makes a big difference. But to give you variety and, keep things interesting, I'm going to move on, right? So have your hands underneath your shoulders, tuck through the toes, lift straight up into plank, and go back up into a down dog. So go all up into a down dog. So in down dog, press back through the thighs, push down through the hands, rotate the shoulders out, a couple deep breaths, and then bringing your knees down. And then once I'm on my knees, I'm going to stand up on my knees. So I'm going to do a little bit of back bending, a twist, and then I'll come up and I'll do a headstand at the wall. But if you really lack flexibility in the upper body and the shoulders, it certainly can factor into why a headstand or handstand can be so complicated. So I'm just rotating to my left. I'm going to reach back for my left foot. Really great through the shoulders and through your back. Really is nice for the lower back. Like you shouldn't feel any kind of pain in the lower back from these. Then bringing yourself up, and then you're going to twist to the right. So you twist to the right. The foot is really not so important to reach to. It's just something that you could do. Keep lifting up towards the ceiling, and then bringing yourself up. And then you're going to rotate to the left again. You want to get lower. The feet don't have to be tucked. Reaching for the left foot. It could be other angles. It doesn't have to be this angle, right?
So keep lifting up, glutes are engaged, bring yourself up, and then rotate to the right. As you rotate to the right, you could reach for the right foot and getting a good lift and kind of see and feel what's actually obstructing you from, the static position that we're in. And then bringing yourself up. And then when you come up, just sit down in between your feet. And when you sit down in between your feet, have your hands down the floor and push into the floor. Now you could use your blocks, like you get yoga blocks. Have the blocks support that. I have long arms. I can get to the floor. Some people cannot. So hug the feet into the hips and then just let that relax. And then hug it in and then relax and then hug it in and then let it relax. My anger yoga, which I'm a big fan of, is that you do like virasana and then you do a headstand, something like that. But this is, I think a great position. Ultimately, the last position that I was doing, if that was difficult, it's partially why I'm doing it. But just it's kind of nice from being here, then eventually being upside down, which we'll do. You can see the effects in the legs and throughout the body in terms of circulation. So just one more time, squeeze the feet in, and then just relax. And over time, you'll be able to sit down low. Know that your knees could be very wide apart, The more flexibility you get in your lower body, closer knees can be together. You could strap yourself in, something like that, right? So come off of the knees, and then when you come off the knees, just stay on the tops of the feet. Index fingers are forward, and this is just for, again, eventually your handstands, right? So press through the hands, round through the shoulders, and just take the knees off the floor. So I'm pressing, I'm lifting. I'm not coming up into anything higher than this, but this is a great starter point for a handstand. You could do 20-second holds, but say 5 times, 10 times. I'm not going to do that, but that's something that you could design for yourself, or I could help you with that, right? But we're going to get into our first headstand. So remember, if you can't take your arms here and support yourself here, you'll want to be in a tripod position, just so that you can support yourself a little bit with the hands. But if you can do this and you haven't been upside down like this, I prefer this because you can really push through the arms. So there's not a whole lot of weight. I don't really like bringing a lot of weight into the neck for anyone, but I'm going to do a couple different variations to show you that. So you might need to flip your mat. So if I flip my mat, it's so that there's some extra padding, right? Especially if you have a thin mat. This is a pretty thin mat. You might want to do it a couple times. But I'm going to do the classic position just so that you see that, and then I'll do some variations at some point in terms of going up and down, because up and down is, say you got a good headstand, going up and down is really what I would do with your headstand, because once you got the up position, you could hold it for a really long time, and it's not necessarily going to make you stronger. Stronger in will, possibly, right? But not necessarily physically in body. Going up and down is where you're going to get more conditioning. So when I come down onto my hands, I'm going to interlace my fingers, and I'm going to be on the top of my head. So I'll teach you a couple different ways, right? So push through the arms, walk the feet in, and you want to be moving your hips forward, right? And then come back down. So that could be the practice initially, just going up, coming down, going up, coming down. Get really used to it, familiar with it, and then you'll be able to go up. But rather than just going up all the way, again, some people really fail in that approach. So you're going to come down on the head, and we will come up, right? So you can push down through the head and then walk forward. Now, if you have good flexibility, you could take the leg up, and then that's how you can take the leg up, right? But if you don't have the flexibility, you want to come into this crouch position and then bring the hips in towards the wall, and this could be your headstand, right? It's a good start, but if you're wanting to learn the line, then you're bringing the legs forward
And then it's not bad if the weight's in the elbows, right? But you want to kind of remember when we were on our belly, you want to keep the belly, keep the ribs in, and then push through the arms to the hands. So come down with bent knees. It's much easier, right? It's easier and it's harder in the sense that you're getting more condensed and stronger. So that's just coming up in that type of position. So come into a squat. So tuck the toes, sit back into your feet. It's basic squat. So if you just want to strictly do headstands and rest in between, you could pick a position like a loaded stretch or a yoga position to do between than just sitting, right? You could kind of combine practices so that you're being more efficient with your time and you're building up more practice to getting into like positions like this. But because just doing one long headstand, like I said, isn't necessarily going to get you stronger. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some sets of going up and down. If you have some headstand experience, like I said, this is a good way. But like I did before, just go down on your head, lift yourself up, a few seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then come back down, and then do it multiple times. Each time you do that, you're going to get a little bit stronger and a little bit more knowing, and then you can come up into, the full position. Not that that's like the be-all, but say there's an interest. It's quite an interesting process, and it'll make you more aware, it'll make you stronger, and the process of doing a really good inversion can be very rehabilitative, especially for your hands, your wrists, your shoulders, even your back, right? If you do a really good headstand or handstand, it can be very good for your spine. So we're going to come down into a tripod position. So I'll show one way that you could just go up onto the elbows. It's like a good basic version. But like I said, I'm going to go up and down for conditioning reasons. I'll go for 5, It's not a huge number. I'm going to do them pretty slow and controlled. And the more slow you do them, the more difficult it is. You don't really have to pile on a huge amount of reps. Like, I think 12 would be a lot of reps for doing this. But I like to keep it like more on the lower count, but a little bit more detailed in how I'm doing it. So come down on your hands, and you want to think of an equilateral triangle. So the head is the point or the top of the triangle, right, in the hands. You line up your head with your hands, you'll fall over. So you have to be in a triangle for stability. Not that you have to, but you're going to be more stable in that way. So come down on the hands. Some people could be better off on closer to the hairline, and use your awareness. If you're like, I shouldn't be doing this, you definitely shouldn't be doing it, right? If you're getting feedback like that, listen to that. And it's not to say that you should never do it, but eventually you can, right? But you want to really listen to your body, right? So be on your hands, come down onto your head, tuck through the toes, walk in. Now, if you're new to this, you're just going to take your knees up onto your elbows, right? And then you can bring the feet down, and you're done. And if you've never done that before, that can be life-changing. Like, it could be like, oh my God, you'll feel superhuman from it, just doing something so small, but, outside of your own capabilities up to this point, right? But like I said, I'm going to go up and down. So I come down. I really want to stay strong through the front of the body. I want to stay strong through the front of my legs to get my legs, in a strong, clean line. So I'm going to come down and keep the elbows in. I'm going to push to the top of my head. I'm pointing through the toes and I'm lifting up. And just for the sake of the video, I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to practice. And then come, if you can, tuck the toes, sit back on the feet. You could sit on the feet, you could sit on your blocks anyway. So like again, if you haven't done that before, it's something that you could work up to, and it'll certainly build up more strength. And it's, again, if it's something that you haven't done before, it'll build up a lot of strength initially, and then it'll get easier. And to be honest, I don't really use these a whole lot. I'll weave them in from time to time. It's good for eventually understanding how to press up. Very different, but similar in some ways to pressing up into a handstand. So it's something that can help in other things. But it's a good starting point. Like some people would disagree completely with me in saying that a headstand has no carryover to a handstand, but it does. It certainly does. And if kicking up or pressing or being on your hands isn't really available, know that this can be a good option, and it can lead to better practice and just being more aware of yourself. So come into a standing forward bend, and then in a standing forward bend, you can kind of move the weight around, just moving the weight forward into the toes, back into the heels, forward into the toes, back into the heels. And then I'm going to slowly roll myself up to standing. And then as I roll up into standing, I'm just, in this basic standing position. So I'm just going to stand off of my mat just so that you can see me better. But I'm going to practice the line of the pelvis again. So stick the butt out and then bring it underneath. Either have your knees bent or your legs straight. Do one or the other. So I'm going to keep my knees bent, and then I'm just tucking underneath with my tailbone. And then I'm going to stick it out. And then I'm pulling it underneath. And again, this is super, super basic, but it's what you're applying when you're upside down. So stick it out again, and then bring it down, and then stick it out, and then bring it down. So here I'm going to be on my toes. I'm going to do a little bit of going back in those extension, or in the back bends that I did, the extension rotation. But you may want to do them on your knees. We did them earlier, or you're on your knees. You could also do them in a standing position. So I'm on my toes. I'm guiding the hips forward. My glutes are engaged. Big reason why I did that earlier. But when I go back, it's not so much that I have to reach back further, or that it's just eventually available to you. I'm going to stay on one side as I do these. So I'm rotating, and I'm bringing the tailbone down. Majority of your spine rotates. So it might be like, I don't know if I should do this. If you feel any kind of pain in your lower back or any part of your spine, of course, limit the range. But I find these much easier on the lower back than, say, going back and doing the classic drop backs. Not that I have anything against those. It's just, for most people, it's more stress, right? So I'm turning and turning. I'm using the front of my legs, and then I can reach back more if that's something that you can do, right? So just so that you can see me better, I'm going to be on the toes. I'm bringing the tailbone down. I'm turning. I'm going to reach back for my left foot with my left hand. So you really have to support your weight, and that's why I like something like this. It's like it's going to make you stronger, but it's going to help you in supporting better tension when you are practicing, which sometimes gets lost in yoga. Sometimes the goal is too much of the end range, and people can really start to hurt from that. So I'm lifting the heels, I'm rotating toward my left foot, and then I'm coming up. Now, if I was practicing, I may want to hold it longer, I may want to do more repetitions, I may want to go to one side more than the other. These are all things that you should consider when you're practicing, because what I'm telling you isn't like the golden rule, right? You can figure out a lot of stuff if you do a little bit more free practice. Self-practice, I think, is really a great thing to practice on your own, right? So I'm going to come down on my hands and my knees. as I come down, I'm just going to be in a short down dog. So in a short down dog, I'm pulling back through the hips, I'm pressing through the hands, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the knees, I'm going to reach for my left foot with my right hand, and then I'm pressing through my right heel, right? I'm turning my body away from my right foot, my back foot. And you could bring more weight into your right foot if you feel like you're falling out, something like that. Maybe not touching. You could get creative with strapping yourself. And the pull of the arm is not as much as you may think. Like, I'm not pulling really hard with my right arm. I'm just letting the inversion and the weight in my feet and the polarity in my hand adjust my body. So I'm going to bring my right hand down, and then I'm going to go bend the knees. So by bending the knees, it's easier to reach across for the foot. So any of these positions that you're grabbing your foot, it's much easier, grab because the distance is shorter. So press up and back. As you press up and back, you can bend the knees. You can reach across with the left hand. You can try to get the center of the palm to match the heel. That's a good thing to develop. And then push the heels apart and turn the body to the right. So bringing more weight in your left foot, using some strength in your abdomen. Right? Wouldn't be bad to go down, go back into it. Come down, go back into it. It's not really ever taught in yoga, but it could be something that you could do. Like, say you went up for 3 seconds and you came down, and you went back up, and you did like 5 to 10 reps. Right? That would build it up so that you could consistently do, say, 30 seconds or a minute if that's something that you want to work up to. Right? So come back onto your hands, and then as you're back on your hands, just go back into a plank again. Let the chest drop down in between the hands, and then push. Let the chest drop down in between the hands, and then push. Keep the weight forward in the front of the hands. Let the chest drop down. Push back up. Keep the weight forward in the hands. Let the chest drop down. And then push back up. And then come back down on the knees. Sit back on the heels. Again, some of the more lower positions, like more in like the movement culture, right? You'll start to get that from having the toes tucked. And then you can untuck the toes and you can sit back on the feet. Both are valuable to do. But I'm going to go back to some wrist work. Just again, because again, the idea is that, say you had no experience on your hands in terms of like pushing. I think that's what's really missing from calisthenics and yoga, is that there's really not a lot of work in preparing the tissues. And some people really fail in learning a handstand or arm balancing because there just isn't the proper steps carried out. So the hands can get injured, or the wrist can get injured. So go back to having your hands, we're going to turn them back, right? So I'm going to turn my left hand back. So my fingers are turned towards me. And I'm going to bend the elbow. And just this basic motion is a good starting point, right? So just move it back in space. Maybe this is as far as you can go. As it gets easier, you could descend your upper body down and then coming up. Not that this is better, but there's more weight to it. Right, so I'm going to come back down, and then I'm up. The thumb is off the floor, but all the 4 fingers are down. And then up. And then one more time down. And then back up. Just to give it some variety, I'm going to sit back on the heels, just so that it's not just hand work or hand practice. But again, the more work you do in the toes, the easier it will be to squat. Some of the lunges that I use in this class. So you can turn the right hand back, and then with the right hand back, bend the elbow. So there's an external rotation in the shoulder, which is handstands and bridges. Right? So I'm bending the elbows. Maybe I can get lower.
Not that you have to get to the floor, it's the direction that you're moving. And then as you're moving through space, you might actually find that there's ranges that you are deficient in, and you could practice them more. And then you're coming up. And then one more time, I'm going to go back, and sit back, and then bringing it back up. So just to have some mobility in the shoulders, which will help, is take the arms out wide, have the thumbs turned up, just so that you have a marker, and rotate the shoulders back so the thumbs are turning back. And work on it, especially in one shoulder, work on getting that rotation. It's very easy to turn from the hands or the elbows, so you want to move from the shoulders. And rotate the thumbs forward and down and in. And this is typically easier for anyone, but the better the shoulders rotate in, the better they'll rotate out. So one more time, rotate them back. And at the speed that I'm moving at, it's really kind of slow. Like I said, you don't need a ton of repetitions. So that's where I almost like time over counting. Because some people just count, right? They're just counting on how many repetitions they do, but they're really not even actually thinking about the quality of the practice. So turn the thumbs up, turn them forward and down, and rotate in. Like some people are like, oh, I got to 30, I got to 50, or I got to 100, and it's like, you're not really practicing the exercises to really understand them. And then you can just bring them back. Take the arms overhead and bring the shoulders up to the ears, just to stretch out the scapula, so the scapula doesn't move, right? Factors in how well you can use your arms or your shoulders. And then just let the shoulders depress, and then just one time lift them up. Really reach for the arms. Again, you don't have to be on the toes the whole time. I am, but you could be in something else. And then bringing the arms back down. So we're going to come into a standing forward bend. So tuck the toes, come up into a standing forward bend, fold forward over your legs. As you fold forward, what you're doing in forward bending and in headstands is that you're really pulling the legs up and in. So as you get the leg closer to the body, that's how you can fold in half, and that's how you can lift yourself up and down. And it's a big part of it. So when you're folding, think that the legs are moving to the upper body. And don't have to be crazy with the sit bones. It's a common injury in yoga. So be more neutral with the sitting bones rather than just lifting them and possibly tearing them, right? So I'm soft in my approach. I'm going to take my left hand underneath my foot, toes up to the wrist. I'm applying more weight into the hands if I need it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my left shoulder out, and like I'm pulling my arm, my shoulder back and up in space to get some traction into the wrist. Really nice, easy way. Can't bring your hand underneath your foot. You could do it on your knees where the hand is underneath the knee. So I'm going to do it on the right side, just so that you can kind of see a different angle. So I'm bringing my right hand underneath, toes up to the wrist, and then you can see how I'm moving my arm. Hopefully I'm rotating it out, and then I'm pulling back. And again, it's not like the end or more range is better. It can be, but it's something that you have to really listen to. There's obviously a way of doing it, but then it's also a process of observing. So I'm pushing my foot into my hand, or I'm bringing more weight into it, and then I'm rotating the shoulder out. Right? And then you can take the hand out, and you can sit down into a squat, possibly. Take 3 deep breaths. You can get in the habit of squatting. It's something that is more that I do it throughout the day and just about everything that I'm doing. And that can help you get in a number of positions. So I'm going to sit down into a seated position, and just to kind of counter some of the back bends and just, I've said this before, with yoga, you should feel incredibly healthy from it. And if you don't, you'll need to supplement your practice with other things in terms of creating a more diverse practice. So I'm going to sit cross-legged, and then as I'm sitting cross-legged, I'm going to take my left hand out to the left, And then I'm just going to get to my left elbow if I can. Now, if you can't get that low, it's okay. But as I get down to the elbow, it's going to be more into the QL and into the ribs. And then I'm going to take my right hand behind my head, and I'm moving back in space. So just getting some shoulder manipulation in as you're in the pose. The arm could be overhead. You could be looking to the hand. You can take the arm up. You can bring yourself up. And then you can recross the legs. And in recrossing the legs, you can take the right arm out to the right. And then you'll notice that it's easier to get lower on one elbow. Not that you have to get lower, but like I said, it's going to add more manipulation to the rib cage, the spine, and the hips, and the lower back, right? So you could take the arm to the side, or you could take the hand behind the head. And let's say it's like, I can't even breathe when I'm down low. We'll go low for a few seconds and then come up, right? When you see an ad for yoga or whatever, or a still shot, that's a still shot. Maybe that person can hold it for a long time, but more time in a position isn't always better, A good hold, 30, 60 seconds is good, right? You can take the left arm out. You can bring yourself back up. So just one more thing I'm going to do for the shoulders, which can be helpful and just good for extension, is I'm going to have my knees bent. I'm going to have my hands turned out. I'm going to push through the hands. I'm going to retract the shoulders. And this is just a basic position. So it's something that you could just stay in. You don't have to come up. But I'm going to come up with my hips. And then as I come up, I'm driving through the feet to keep the hips up. I want them to stay up. And side to side is much easier. So if you can't move forward, which I'm going to move forward, you could just stick to a side to side motion, which is good for the wrists, good for the shoulders. But keep the hips up and move the hips forward, but keep the abdomen in. Push through the heels. Move it back in space. Just going to do 3. Just going to come forward. Glutes are engaged, hips are high. Really driving through my feet. And then back. And then forward. So some people just get too caught up with coming forward without the integrity of the hips. So if you really want to get into your back, keep your hips up. If you want to get more into your shoulders, you don't necessarily need that, but again, you don't want to just go all out and break your shoulders, right? So bring your hips down, and you can sit however comfortably or whatever position you'd like to sit in. I'm just going to sit in just a regular position. Just going to take a few breaths. So I hope you had a great class today. I hope you enjoyed these classes. You could always send me a video of your handstand or your headstand, and I could help you with that. I really believe that's the best way of learning, is getting good, honest feedback from another person. It doesn't have to be from me. It could be from anyone, that has, a skillful eye and that understands how to do these positions. And then you could use the feedback in layering it and developing it, because it's very hard to do on your own. You certainly could videotape yourself and study yourself, or photos, and that's a great way. But again, I hope you like the class. If you do, share it with friends, family. Let them know that I could help them in their practice. I have a class tomorrow morning. It's 9 a.m. It's also on Instagram and Facebook. So if you have some time and you want a more fundamental class, that's a great class to take. And then Sunday, a similar class, but it's in a different platform. It's on Zoom. You register for that class at my website, jonwittyoga.com. All right. Have a beautiful weekend if I don't see you. Happy Thanksgiving. Some of the classes I won't be teaching next week, so check my schedule on my website. Namaste.